President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Vice President Shettima on Wednesday tendered a copy of the Labour Party membership register for Anambra State in proof of their claim that Peter Obi is not a registered member of the Labour Party.
Tinubu and Shettima had argued in their response to the petition by Obi and the Labour Party that not being a member of the party as at the time of the last presidential election, Obi was not qualified to have contested the last election on the platform of the Labour Party. Joining us this morning is Nelson Ekujumi, Executive Director, Center for Social and Economic Rights, CSER. He joins us to dissect this new update. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
All right, we're hoping that we can have you connect. The network doesn't seem to... All right, seems you're back now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's get into the conversation, but first let's start with your analysis of the tribunal so far. It's been several stories back and forth. On Monday, we saw that they couldn't call witnesses. On one party couldn't call witnesses, and they adjourned till Tuesday. So many developments. Would you say that so far you've been impressed with how the Election Petition Tribunal has been run?
Absolutely. The Election Petition Tribunal is keen into its word of being objective and dispassionate about its responsibility. And we must also commend the tribunal for sticking to the time frame it has given to the various litigants. But the petitioners or the respondents, we have seen them all come to the tribunal with their evidences that they have. And, the tribunal in its wisdom has, admitted almost every and anything that anybody is bringing. It is now when time comes for, delivering judgment that the tribunal will separate the wheat from the chaff. So far, so good. The tribunal has done tremendously well. This is what is expected of any judicial umpire, to hear from, we have this saying in our land here as the Africans, that, to dispense justice, you must hear from, all parties to a dispute. That is exactly what the tribunal is doing so far.
Okay, and then, of course, the bone of contention as of yesterday, there were a couple of things that, of course, were deliberated yesterday. Witnesses were called and in cross-examined by both sides. But, of course, one of the things we'll talk about this morning is challenging Peter Obi's membership of the Labour Party. Some people have described it as a non-issue, including Peter Obi's legal representatives. Of course, it has been, I think, taken to the High Court before, I believe, and has already been settled. So, do you think that this is a distraction, or is something that really should be looked at by the court?
Oh, every issue with regards to the submissions of litigants and their clients has to be looked into by the tribunal. Don't forget the respondents. In bringing up that position yesterday, cited the provisions of the Electoral Act. And you and I, as we sit here, are very, very much aware that whatever judgment the tribunal is going to give is with regards to provisions of the Electoral Act. The tribunal is not going to come up, with its own rules on what should be. The tribunal or the judiciary, its responsibility is to uphold the law. And how does it uphold the law? It is to look at what does the law say, and have you complied with the law? If you are complied with the law, that is well and good. But if at any point of argument or submission of documents, and when sieving through, the tribunal finds out that according to Section A, you are in breach of it, then definitely the tribunal will give judgment against you. So every evidence or any issue that any of the parties are bringing to the tribunal, you can see that the tribunal is taking them in. We should all be patient to wait till the tribunal give judgment. Then, whether a judgment has been given with regards to that case in the past, don't forget that judgment was at the High Court. Those opposing sides could have as well gone to the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. But if they are bringing this again to the tribunal, all well and good. That is to tell you clearly that the tribunal is giving everybody a fair hearing. That come and say your own. Bring your facts to substantiate whatever you are bringing to us. It is our responsibility to look at what does the law says, and then we'll do justice to it.
Well, there's the argument that it is a pre-election matter also, and so I'm just putting in views of people who say that this is a distraction and a waste of time. Of course, you may not agree, and nobody needs to agree with that. But there's the argument that it is a pre-election matter, and so it is statute barred. And so does that then push for more, of the argument that it's a waste of time?
Well, I don't think it's a waste of time. Don't forget, the tribunal has given the respondents about 12 days, to open and close their case. And, within a day, they have just done that. Whatever anybody likes, they are free to say. Opinions are free. It is the responsibility of the tribunal. The tribunal has a time frame with regards to when it should dispense with a electoral dispute. The tribunal is guided by the Constitution and the Electoral Act. We must get that clear. So whether you are voicing an opinion that this is a waste of time or this is not a waste of time, that should be left for the tribunal to decide. But as a Democrat, we are all free, to voice our opinions on this issue. But the ultimate decider will be the tribunal. It is the tribunal now that will decide whether it is a waste of time or it's a frivolous exercise or it was worthwhile. So it is within the purview of the tribunal to give a judicial decision on that.
All right. And also, I'd like you to react to those who say that this is also a matter that had been taken to court before and had already been decided. And I'd like you to react to that as well.
Yes, I said earlier on that even if the cases have been taken to court, don't forget, the court is a regular court. This is a tribunal for adjudicating on electoral matters. Whether pre or election day proper, all these are issues that you can bring to the tribunal. In dispensing justice, the tribunal will be guided by the Electoral Act as well as the Constitution. And the tribunal will say, oh, this matter you have brought before us is not supposed to come before us. This is our area of focus. But as a tribunal that wants to be seen as fair and has been focused on justice, it is within their powers to say, okay, bring whatever you have. Even you have seen that some of the materials or some of the evidences that have been tendered by some of the parties have been objected by the other side. But the tribunal has said, okay, bring everything, let us take it in, we'll do the needful. That is our own responsibility. Yours is to avail us your fact. Ours is to look into it and do the needful as prescribed by law.
All right, Ms. Akujumi, I would like you to also react to the EU election observance mission's report that basically stated that the elections that happened in Nigeria cannot be considered to have been credible. It says there can be no confidence in the results of these elections. I want your quick reactions to that. I remember that Dele Alake, of course, has spoken and also shared his views on that. But what are your thoughts? And do you think that the EU got these statements right from their analysis?
I think I want to align myself with the presidential spokesman that the EU position on the 2023 election was jaundiced. Because if you look at the parameters used to arrive at this conclusion, it is absurd. It is laughable. An election was conducted in 176,606 polling units across 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And the EU has said they had 11 analysts in Abuja and 40 election observers. And later on we got to know that all the observers or analysts they have in total was just about 110. You yourself, if you are a good student of history, as a research methodology student, you and I know what is called reliability and validity in research. If you are researching into an issue, what you are first of all asked to do majorly is to ensure that your target sample size is proportionate to the population you want to sample, because we and I know very well that because of time and because of resources, you cannot get to every nook and cranny. But you take a sample size that will be representative of the population you are conducting your research on. I want Nigerians to look at, to juxtapose whether 51 or 110 vis-a-vis 176,000. Does that make arithmetical sense? Absolutely not. I wonder how they arrived at that position.
Yeah, but not all of their...
Just a minute, hold on, just a minute.
All right.
But like some of us have said, election observers, both locally and internationally, were were accredited to observe that election. And we have all written a report, even including yours sincerely, I've written a report with regards to the observation of my group that was accredited by INEC, and we have submitted a report to INEC, and we have made a recommendation. But to come and say based on 110 that election is flawed, or that the election is not ready, I think the EU need to go and sit down and read what the Electoral Act of Nigeria says, for them to be in tune with the provisions with regards to our electoral laws, and stop speaking in the air on issues that they have exhibited absolute ignorance.
Yeah, but some of the observations or some of the things that were mentioned by the EU's mission don't necessarily need, to have 100,000 people monitoring the elections to see that. For example, the reinstatement of Senator Ahmed Lawan, which was mentioned. Of course, the lack of IReV being used for the presidential election results. Everybody could see that glaringly. We didn't need EU to be spread across the whole country to see that election results were not, uploaded on the IReV. And so there's a couple of things that they mentioned that, obviously were not, cannot be disputed. These are clear facts, and can you also share some of your recommendations? You mentioned that you were part of the groups that had your own observation mission. So can you share some of the recommendations that you also made?
Before I give you my own recommendations, I think it is appropriate for me to respond to what you have said. One, the responsibility of INEC is to conduct elections. The responsibility of INEC is not to determine which candidate party A or party B brings. The former Senate president's candidature was affirmed by a court of law. And you and I know that INEC is a legal body. It's a body set up by law. Once a party submits the name of a candidate, so long as the candidate meets the deadline of INEC, INEC is duty bound to accept such candidate. It was not INEC that reinstated Senator Ahmed Lawan. It was the court. So if anybody has problem with the candidature of Senator Ahmed Lawan, you should go to the court. That one is very clear. Then you talked about the IReV. The IReV is an electronic device that INEC has the liberty to upload results. But our electoral law is very, very clear that on election day, at the conclusion of collation of results are the scores of each political party are entered into a result sheet called Form EC8A, and that result sheet is signed by the electoral officer, countersigned by the party agent's president, as well as the security agent president. And the parties are all given a copy of that result sheet. So, as we speak, the parties in court before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, if you have been following it, not one of them has come out with a result sheet from one polling unit to say the result on this polling unit, it is with what has been declared, is at variance, that the result has been tampered with. Not one of the petitioners at the Petition Tribunal. And what does that tell you? That INEC has conformed with the provisions of the Electoral Act. If you are talking about IReV, I'm sure you are aware of the judgment of the Supreme Court with regards to the Osun State gubernatorial election of 2022, where the issue of IReV also came up. And I'm sure if anybody is in doubt, I want to beg that person to go and read the judgment of the Supreme Court in that regard. Yes, with regards to my own observation, what we did, my observation that I observed the election with, of which I was the head of media and mobilization, is Voters Awareness Initiative, one of our parent civil society organizations. And one of our recommendations was that there is need for INEC to up its game with regards to the logistic challenge that has become a recurring decimal. Another of our recommendations is that INEC should ensure that she avails personnel majorly with election points days before the election. We also, as part of our recommendation, called for increased voter sensitization and education, whereby voters will know where they are to vote on election day, rather than somebody getting to election points on election day only to be told that, no, this is not your polling unit. And such voters become traumatized or disturbed because they want to exercise their franchise, but they don't know where they are to vote. So we have asked for electronic or technological improvements in terms of the engagements between INEC and the voters.
In addition to some of these recommendations that you've made, would you also agree with the EU in terms of Nigerians having been in some measure disenfranchised when it comes to being allowed to vote. Now, I'm going to quote something that was said. It says Nigeria's law, of course, allows registration up to like 90 days before the elections, but that the possibility, INEC closed the possibility over 6 months before the election day. Now, EU says that no temporary mechanism was adopted to avoid disenfranchisement of citizens. Is this a position that you or your organization would maybe agree with?
Well, my organization's observation with regards to that is that INEC as a body is bound by law. The Electoral Acts or the Constitution stipulates when INEC registration of voters must close, and INEC was in tune with that. So part of the recommendations of the EU that they have said is with regards to fine-tuning the electoral laws. If we say we want to allow the electoral law to be amended in such a way that voters can still register up to 30 days before the election, that is our responsibility as a people, and to take to the National Assembly. That is not the role of INEC. INEC's role is to enforce the law. What does the law say as we speak? The law stipulates very clearly that the registration of voters must end X, Y days before election. And that was exactly what INEC did. INEC didn't make that law. So if we want a change in that law, like the EU is trying to advocate, it is our responsibility as Nigerians, as part of our civic engagement, to go to INEC and say, okay, the election days before, the registration of voters before election needs to be amended. We need to allow more Nigerians, to come, to be able to perform their civic responsibility. That is not too much to ask. But
absolutely.
Want to hold INEC responsible, I disagree absolutely.
Yeah, well, Mr. Ikujumi, you mentioned one of your recommendations was, that Nigerians should be, guided properly as to where their polling units are, where their voting stations are, so that they are not traumatized or some of that sort. But I want to ask if you can say outrightly that was one of the biggest problems in the just concluded elections. If your observance and from some of the things that you monitored, you can give us statistics that show that 60%, 70%, 80%, of Nigerians that were trying to vote couldn't find their polling units. Is that one of the things that you would describe as one of the... And the reason I'm asking is because you have said that the EU doesn't have enough spread across the country to show that they were able to cover the elections properly and be given recommendations. So can you share with us, percentage of Nigerians who didn't know where their polling unit was? They were confused and they were traumatized. And so that was why that became, for you, the recommendation that should be made towards INEC, seeing the other plethora of issues that happened during the elections.
Well, for your information, that research cannot be carried out because the responsibility we had on election day with the voters was to observe the election. And as part of our observation, we noticed that.
But I get that. I'm saying, for you to be making a recommendation, you must have seen that it happened in a large number of places. So can you give us an idea?
Okay, if you want to ask me, I don't think those that had this issue was up to 5%, if you ask me, because my group was not only the one that observed this lacuna. We also had interactions with other civil society organizations, as well as monitoring, a reportage via the media. And the truth of the matter is that, go and look at the history of our elections. Almost 90% of the people that came to polling unit to vote on election day are the same people that have voted in 2 previous elections. The additions you have is not up to 5% of new voters.
So what you're saying now is that the statistics show that was not an election issue at all. At least it wasn't big enough for it to be made a recommendation by your group. But did your group make any recommendations? Did you notice anything concerning violence during the elections? Did your group notice anything like that? Did your group notice anything concerning failure of results to be uploaded on IReV? And was that part of your recommendations also?
Part of our recommendations was that we got reports from observers about violence at polling stations. And we called on the security agencies to rise to the occasion, because the security of the election is not the responsibility of INEC. The security of the election is the responsibility of the security agencies. So we must not mix that up. We have seen situations where INEC has postponed elections because of security threats. that tells you clearly that INEC is supposed to work with the security agencies. And if INEC has gone to a polling center to set up and they are threatened, the INEC personnel are human beings. They also run for their dear lives, like the video you are showing, like every other person is running, because the INEC personnel don't have 2 lives. The issue about voters not being able to identify their polling unit is a critical one, because even if it is one voter, no voter deserves to be denied the right to exercise his franchise.
All right.
That is why even if it's 2 people we saw on that day, we made that recommendation that these 2 Nigerians were unable to.
Great. And so the EU is also, the EU should then be allowed to make the recommendations, even if you had 13 cases, even if you had 3 cases that the EU noticed these issues that they've made the recommendations on. Shouldn't they also be allowed to make the recommendation, even if it's one person, Mr. Ikujumi?
The truth of the matter is that the EU cannot arrive at a general assessment based on their statistics of 110 observers.
All right. Unfortunately,
So they should tell us the percentage of people that they used to arrive at their conclusion.
All right.
Then we take them serious.
All right, Mr. Ikujumi, it's always interesting speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I look forward to having you again. If you will, we would like that you share a link with your recommendations with us, so that we can also look through it and bring you back again. Thanks for your time.
I will.
Thank you very much for joining us. All right.